The glass shattered against the marble floor as Victoria Hale hurled the crystal tumbler across her office, screaming at no one, a sound so raw, so broken, it didn't belong to the woman the world feared. Her wheelchair trembled beneath her shaking hands as she clutched a torn photograph to her chest, mascara streaming down her face like black rivers of every secret she'd buried for 30 years. And standing frozen in the doorway was a single father holding a toolbox who was never supposed to see her like this. Before we go further, drop the city you're watching from in the comments so I can see how far this story has traveled. And if stories about second chances move you, hit subscribe. You won't want to miss what happens next. The alarm clock on Ethan Cole's nightstand never got the chance to ring. It never did. By 4:47 a.m., his eyes were already open, staring at the water stain on the ceiling that had been spreading for 3 years, the same way grief had been spreading inside him. He swung his legs over the edge of the mattress, slowly, careful not to make the springs creak. The wall between his bedroom and Noah's was thinner than cardboard, and his 6-year-old son was the lightest sleeper in Queens. Ethan padded across the cold linoleum in his bare feet. The apartment was 487 square feet of survival. A kitchenette with a stove that only worked on 3 burners. A bathroom door that didn't quite close. A living room that doubled as Noah's playroom. His homework room, and on hard nights the place where Ethan slept on the couch so his son could have the bed. He opened the refrigerator and the light flickered twice before holding steady. Half a gallon of milk, 3 eggs, a heel of bread. He did the math in his head, the way he always did breakfast for Noah, skip his own make it to Friday. "Dad?" The small voice came from behind him. Ethan turned around, and there he was, Noah in his Spider-Man pajamas, with the worn-out knees holding his stuffed elephant by one ear. "Hey, buddy, what are you doing up?" "I had the dream again." Ethan crossed the kitchen in 2 steps and dropped to one knee. He pulled his son against his chest, feeling the small ribs through the thin fabric, the way Noah's heart was still beating too fast. "The one with Mommy." Noah nodded against his shoulder. Was it the good kind or the sad kind? "The sad kind. She was leaving, and I couldn't make her stay." Ethan closed his eyes. 26 months. That was how long it had been since the cancer took Sarah from them. 26 months since he'd watched the only woman he'd ever loved slip away in a hospice bed while their 4-year-old colored a picture in the waiting room. 26 months of being mother, father, breadwinner, and ghost. "You know what I think," Ethan said, pulling back to look at his son's face. "I think Mommy doesn't leave in those dreams. I think she just goes to check on us from a different place. And the sad part is just because we miss her." "Do you miss her?" "Every single day, Noah. Every single second." The boy's lower lip trembled. Ethan kissed his forehead. "You want to help me make breakfast? I'll let you crack the eggs." "Even if I get shells in. Especially if you get shells in. Crunchy eggs are my favorite." Noah almost smiled. That was enough. That was always enough. 20 minutes later, they were sitting at the small folding table by the window, the kind of table Ethan had bought at a Goodwill for $9 when they'd moved into this apartment after the medical bills ate the house. Noah was eating scrambled eggs on toast. Ethan was drinking coffee black, no sugar, because sugar cost money, and the coffee was already 3 days old. "Dad, are you working today?" "Yeah, buddy. I have to fix something at a big building in Manhattan." "How big?" 82 floors. Noah's eyes went wide. That's like the sky." "Pretty close to it." "Will you bring me a picture?" "I'll bring you 2 pictures." Noah stuffed another forkful of eggs into his mouth and chewed thoughtfully. "Dad." "Yeah." "Mrs. Patterson said her husband used to fix things too, but she said he doesn't anymore because he's old now. Are you gonna get old?" Ethan laughed for the first time that morning. It was a small laugh, dusty from disuse. "Yeah, Noah. Eventually I'm gonna get old, but not for a long, long time. You're gonna be tired of me before that happens." "I'm never gonna be tired of you." The words went straight through Ethan's ribs and lodged somewhere behind his sternum. He had to look away for a second, pretending to check the time on the microwave. "Eat your eggs, kiddo. Mrs. Patterson's gonna be here in 15 minutes. Ma'am." Mrs. Patterson lived 2 doors down. She was 73 years old, a widow, and the closest thing Ethan had to family in this city since Sarah died. She watched Noah every weekday for $40 and a hot dinner on Fridays. It wasn't enough money, and Ethan knew it. He'd tried to pay her more once, and she'd refused so firmly that he'd never brought it up again. "You bring me that boy at 7:15 sharp," she'd said the first day, "and you don't insult me with your money beyond what I already asked for. I had 3 sons of my own. They're grown, and they don't call. So you let me have this one." When she knocked on the door at 7:15, Noah was already dressed in his school uniform, his backpack bigger than his torso. "There's my handsome man," Mrs. Patterson said, opening her arms. Noah ran to her. She kissed the top of his head and looked up at Ethan with eyes that had seen too much of life to be fooled by anybody. "You sleeping at all, sweetheart?" "I'm fine, Mrs. P." "That's not what I asked." "I'm fine. I have to go. Big job today." "Where you headed?" "Hale Industries." She raised her eyebrows. "The Hale Industries, with the woman on the magazines." "That's the one. Lord, don't get yourself in trouble up there, Ethan Cole. Those people up in those towers, they don't see folks like us. They look right through us like we're glass." "I'm just fixing a server, Mrs. P, in and out." "Mm-hmm." She wasn't convinced. "You take care of yourself. That boy needs his daddy in one piece." Ethan crouched down and pulled Noah into a hug that lasted 3 seconds longer than usual. He didn't know why. Maybe because of the dream. Maybe because he was tired. Maybe because something in his chest had been whispering all morning that today was different. "I love you, Noah." "I love you, Dad." "What's the rule?" "Be brave, be kind, come home." "That's right." He kissed his son's forehead and stood up before he could change his mind. The subway from Queens to Midtown was 40 minutes if everything ran on time, which it never did. Ethan stood near the door with his toolbox between his feet, his uniform shirt buttoned all the way up the embroidered patch on his chest reading "Cole It Support" in red thread. He worked for a contracting firm that sent technicians out to corporate clients across the city. The pay was $31 an hour. After taxes, after the rent, after Noah's school costs, after Mrs. Patterson, after groceries, there were nights Ethan ate plain rice with hot sauce so his son could have chicken. He didn't complain. He didn't have the time to complain. His phone buzzed in his pocket. It was a text from his dispatcher, Marcus. "Cole, Hale Industries, 82nd floor, executive suite. Server diagnostic on the private network. Be there by 8:30. And Cole, listen to me. This is a level 1 client. You don't speak unless spoken to. You don't look at anyone. You fix what they tell you to fix and you get out. Understood?" Ethan typed back, "Understood." Another buzz. "One more thing. The CEO's assistant left specific instructions. When you reach the office door, do not knock. I repeat, do not knock. Just open the door and announce yourself once you're inside." Ethan read it twice. He'd worked dozens of executive offices in his 3 years with the firm. He'd been told to wear shoe covers, to use service elevators, to stay silent, to bow his head, to pretend he was furniture. But he had never not once been told not to knock. He typed back, "Copy." Then he put the phone away and tried not to think about it. The Hale Industries building rose out of Midtown, like a black glass dagger pointed at the sky. Ethan had walked past it 100 times. He'd never been inside. The lobby was the size of a cathedral. Marble floors, a reception desk made of something that looked like it cost more than his apartment. Security guards in suits that fit better than any clothes Ethan had ever owned. He approached the desk with his toolbox in his hand. The receptionist looked up. Her name tag said Brenda. Her smile was professional and empty. "I'm here for the IT call, 82nd floor. Name, Ethan Cole, from Meridian Tech Services." She typed something. A printer behind her spit out a visitor badge. She slid it across the counter without making eye contact. "Service elevator is around the corner. Use code 9947 to access the executive floor. When you exit, turn left. The corner office at the end of the hall is Ms. Hale's. Do not stop at any other door. Do not speak to any other staff member. Are these instructions clear? Crystal. And Mr. Cole. Yes. She finally looked up. Her eyes were sharp. Do not knock. He nodded. He walked to the service elevator. He pressed the button. He waited. In the steel reflection of the elevator doors, he caught a glimpse of himself, 35 years old, hair starting to gray at the temples, dark circles under his eyes, a scar on his jaw from the night Sarah's father had punched him at the funeral because he'd needed somewhere to put his grief. The doors opened. Ethan stepped inside. He punched the code. The elevator began to climb. 82 floors up, the world looked different. The hallway was so quiet that Ethan could hear his own breathing. The carpet was so thick his work boots made no sound. The walls were lined with abstract paintings that he was sure cost more than he would make in a lifetime. He turned left the way Brenda had told him to. He walked past door after door, names etched in brushed steel plates. Vice President, Chief Financial Officer, General Counsel. At the very end of the hall, the corner office. The plate on the door read simply, V. Hale. Ethan stopped. His hand went up automatically to knock. It was muscle memory. It was the way he'd been raised. You knock before you enter. You announce yourself. You give the person inside the dignity of preparing for you. His knuckles hovered an inch from the wood. Do not knock. He lowered his hand. He took a breath. He gripped the toolbox a little tighter. He told himself that this was just like any other job. $31 an hour. Get in, get out. Go home to Noah. He turned the handle. He pushed the door open. The office was dim. The blinds were drawn against the morning sun, leaving only thin slats of gold cutting across the dark floor. The air smelled like expensive perfume, and something else, something sharper, something sour. Stress. Maybe whiskey. And then he saw her. She was on the floor. Victoria Hale, the woman whose face was on the cover of Forbes, whose name appeared in the Wall Street Journal 3 times a week, whose empire spanned 47 countries and employed 18,000 people, was on the floor of her own office. Her wheelchair was tipped sideways behind her, one wheel still spinning slowly. Her silver-streaked dark hair had fallen forward over her face. Her tailored white silk blouse was wrinkled, the top 3 buttons undone. She was clutching something to her chest. A photograph. Torn down the middle. Her shoulders were shaking. She was crying. No, she was sobbing. The kind of sobbing that comes from a place so deep inside a person that it doesn't even sound human anymore. The kind of sobbing Ethan had only heard once before in his entire life, and that had been in his own throat the night Sarah died. Ethan stood frozen in the doorway. The toolbox was suddenly very heavy in his hand. His brain was telling him to leave, to back out of the room, to pretend he had never seen this, to go back down the elevator and tell Marcus the call had been canceled, and get on the subway and go home to his son. But his feet wouldn't move, because the woman on the floor, the most powerful woman in American business, looked exactly like every broken person he had ever known. She looked like his mother had looked the night his father walked out. She looked like his wife had looked in the 3rd week of chemotherapy, when the doctors had stopped lying to them. She looked like Ethan himself had looked in the bathroom mirror at 3 a.m. the night after the funeral, when he'd had to remember how to breathe in and out, so his son wouldn't wake up to find him dead on the tile floor. She looked like a human being. And nobody was supposed to see Victoria Hale like a human being. She hadn't noticed him yet. The crying was too loud. Ethan set his toolbox down very, very gently on the carpet. He cleared his throat. Ma'am. Her head snapped up. For a half second before the mask came back, he saw her face, tear-streaked. Mascara running in black rivers down her cheeks. Eyes red and swollen and wide with something he could only call terror. She was beautiful. That wasn't the right word. She was devastating. Even like this, maybe especially like this. She was maybe 45, maybe a little older. Her bone structure was the kind that the camera loved and that magazines paid for. But right now, on the floor of her own office, she didn't look like a magazine. She looked like a woman who had been holding the entire weight of her own life in her two hands for so long that her arms had finally given out. "Get out!" Her voice was hoarse from screaming. He realized, somewhere in the back of his mind, that the screaming must have happened just before he'd opened the door. Maybe seconds before. The room still felt charged with it. "Get out of my office! Get out right now!" Ethan didn't move. She tried to push herself up. Her arms shook. She got maybe 6 inches off the floor before she collapsed back down with a small wounded sound that broke his heart in a way he hadn't expected. The wheelchair was 3 feet from her, tipped on its side. He understood all at once what had happened. She had thrown herself out of it, or fallen out of it. Either way, she was on the floor and she could not get back up by herself. And she was humiliated. He could see it in her face. The terror wasn't just from being seen crying. It was from being seen helpless. From being seen as a body that didn't work the way other bodies worked. From being seen as anything other than the cold, untouchable, perfect Victoria Hale that the world had been told to be afraid of. "Did you hear me?" Her voice cracked. "I said get out!" Ethan took 1 step into the room. He shut the door behind him very softly. He heard the latch click. "Ma'am," he said, and his voice came out steadier than he felt. "My name is Ethan Cole. I'm with Meridian Tech Services. I was sent up here to fix a server. I don't care who you are. I know you don't. But I'm not going to leave you on the floor." Her face went white, then red, then white again. "You will leave this office. You will leave it right now. Or I will have you fired. I will have your company sued out of existence. I will have you, ma'am." He kept his voice low, the way he talked to Noah when Noah was scared. "Ma'am, I have a 6-year-old son at home. I really need this job. I really do. I need it more than you can probably understand. But I'm still not going to leave you on the floor." She stared at him. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. For the first time in maybe a very long time, Victoria Hale didn't know what to say. Ethan took another small step forward. He stopped about 6 feet from her. He crouched down so that he was at her level. He put his hands on his knees so she could see them, see that they were empty, see that he wasn't a threat. "I'm going to ask you a question," he said quietly. "And I'm going to ask it because I don't know what else to ask. Are you hurt?" The tears were still rolling down her face, but the screaming had stopped. "Are you hurt, ma'am? Did you hit your head when you fell? Did you break anything?" "No." "Okay, that's good. That's real good." He nodded slowly. "Now I'm going to ask you the next question. And you can say no. You can say no, and I'll stand up and walk back out that door and tell my dispatcher the call got rescheduled and nobody will ever know I was here. Okay." She was watching him like he was a strange animal she had never seen before. "Can I help you back into your chair?" The silence stretched. She closed her eyes. A fresh tear rolled down her cheek and dripped off her jaw onto the silk blouse. When she opened her eyes again, her voice was barely a whisper. "Why? Why what? Why do you care?" Ethan thought about Noah, about Sarah, about Mrs. Patterson making breakfast 2 doors down, about every person who had ever picked him up off a floor when he hadn't been able to stand up by himself. "Because somebody has to," he said. "And right now, ma'am, I'm the somebody who's here." Victoria Hale looked at this stranger crouched on her office floor. This man with grease under his fingernails and a name patch on his shirt, and a wedding ring he still hadn't taken off, and something inside her, something that had been locked for 30 years, made a small sound like ice cracking on a frozen lake. She didn't say yes. She just nodded once very slightly. And Ethan Cole, single father server technician, $31 an hour, set his toolbox aside, got down on both knees on the marble floor of the most powerful office in Manhattan, and slowly, carefully, gently reached out his hands to the woman the world was afraid of. Her hand was cold when it touched his. That was the first thing Ethan noticed. The second thing he noticed was that she was lighter than he'd expected. Not because she was a small woman. She wasn't. She had the long bones of someone who had once been athletic, but because she had gone completely limp, the way a person goes limp when they've stopped fighting whatever it is they've been fighting. "I'm gonna put my arm under your shoulders," he said quietly, "and my other arm under your knees. Is that okay?" "Yes. Tell me if it hurts." "It always hurts." He paused. He looked at her. She was staring at the ceiling, her jaw clenched, refusing to meet his eyes. "What hurts?" "Everything from the waist down." "Always." "Always." He nodded slowly. He didn't say, "I'm sorry." He'd hated when people said "I'm sorry" to him after Sarah died, as if their pity could fix anything, as if their words weighed more than the silence in his apartment at 2 a.m. He slid one arm beneath her shoulders. He slid the other beneath her knees. She inhaled sharply. "Okay. Just do it." He lifted her. She was easier to lift than he'd thought. He walked the 4 short steps to the wheelchair which was lying on its side. He couldn't set her down without righting it first. He looked at the chair. He looked at her. "Ma'am, I'm gonna have to put you down for 1 second so I can pick up the chair. I'll set you on the couch right behind us. Is that all right?" "Fine." He walked her to the leather couch against the far wall and lowered her onto it as gently as he could. Her arms were trembling. He realized she was holding herself rigid, every muscle taut, because she was terrified that he would drop her, or worse, that he would see her, see the way her legs wouldn't move on their own, see the way her body had betrayed her. He didn't look. He kept his eyes on her face. "I'll be right back." "Don't—" she started, then stopped. "Don't what?" "Don't leave." It came out so small, so unlike her. He nodded. "I'm just gonna get the chair. I'm not going anywhere, Ms. Hale." "Victoria." He blinked. "Ma'am." "My name is Victoria. If you're going to see me like this, don't call me Ms. Hale. It's grotesque." Something in his chest tightened. He nodded once. "Victoria. I'm gonna get the chair. I'm right here." He crossed back to the overturned wheelchair and lifted it upright in one motion. It was heavier than he'd expected, custom-made, expensive. The frame painted a deep matte black. He wheeled it over to the couch and locked the brakes. He went down on one knee in front of her. Same way as before. Yes. He lifted her again. He set her in the chair. He waited while she adjusted her own legs with her hands moving them into position because they would not move themselves. He saw her flinch when she lifted her left thigh. He pretended not to see. When she was settled, she let out a long, shaky breath. "There," he said softly. "There you go." She closed her eyes. 2 more tears slipped out from beneath her lashes. She wiped them away with the back of her wrist, smearing more mascara across her cheekbone. "My face must look horrifying." "You look like somebody who's been crying, that's all." "That's quite a generous translation, Mr. Cole." "Ethan." She opened her eyes. "What?" "You said don't call you Ms. Hale, so I'm telling you, don't call me Mr. Cole, it's Ethan." She studied him for a long moment. He held her gaze. He didn't smile. He didn't perform. He didn't do any of the things people did when they were trying to win something from her. He just looked at her the way he would have looked at any other person and waited. "Ethan," she said finally, "there's a bathroom through that door. There's a hand towel. Could you wet it for me, with cold water?" "Yes, ma'am." "Victoria." "Victoria, yes." He stood up and walked to the door she'd pointed to. The bathroom on the other side was the size of his entire kitchen at home. Italian marble, gold fixtures, a vanity with maybe $2,000 worth of cosmetics arranged on a silver tray. He grabbed a folded white towel from a heated rack, a heated towel rack he thought distantly imagine, and ran it under the cold tap until it was soaked. He wrung it out. He brought it back to her. She reached for it. He handed it over. She pressed it against her face and held it there for almost a full minute, breathing slowly. When she lowered the towel, the makeup was mostly gone. Her face was raw and blotchy and swollen and human, and somehow even more striking than it had been before when she'd been hiding behind the war paint. "Better?" he asked. "Worse probably, but cleaner." She set the towel on the small side table next to the couch. She straightened her blouse with her hands. She tried to button the top 3 buttons. Her fingers were still shaking too hard. She gave up and pulled the silk closed and held it shut with one fist. Then she looked at him. "What time is it?" He checked his watch. 8:43. "My 9 o'clock is the head of the European division. He's flying in from Frankfurt. He landed an hour ago. He'll be in this office in 17 minutes, with 3 vice presidents." "Okay." I cannot be seen like this." "Then we won't let you be seen like this." You don't understand. You don't understand what they would—" "Victoria." He kept his voice low. "I'm not asking what they would do. I'm telling you we have 17 minutes, so we use them. What do you need?" She stared at him. Had he realized the look of a woman who had been holding a 1,000-pound door shut against the world for so long that she had forgotten there was anything on the other side of it. A woman who had not asked for help in so long that the question itself was foreign to her. "What do you need?" 3 words. She didn't have an answer. "I don't know," she whispered. "Okay, that's okay. Then I'll guess. Tell me if I'm right or wrong." He nodded toward her face. "You need to fix your makeup. You need a different blouse because that one is wrinkled and the buttons are torn. You need water because you've been crying for a while and you're probably dehydrated. You need to call your assistant and push the meeting back 15 minutes. Am I close?" She let out a sound that was almost a laugh. It surprised her. He could see it surprise her. "How did you know about the buttons?" "I'm looking at them." She looked down. The silk had pulled apart at the seam where the top button used to be. The button itself was on the floor by the desk, 6 feet away. "Oh. What do you keep in this office, spare clothes?" "Yes, there's a closet behind that wall." She gestured. "It looks like a panel. Press the upper right corner." He walked to the wall. He pressed where she'd told him. A door clicked open silently, revealing a closet the size of his bedroom. There were maybe 20 blouses hanging there in a row, all white or cream or pale blue, all silk, all impossibly expensive. He picked the one closest to the front, a cream one without any visible damage, and brought it back to her. "Will this work?" "Yes." He set it on the arm of the couch. He turned his back to give her privacy. "You don't have to do that." "I know I don't have to." "I appreciate it." He heard the rustle of silk behind him. He heard her swear quietly when her fingers fumbled the buttons. He didn't turn around. "Ethan." "Yes." "My phone is on the desk. Could you bring it to me, please?" "Yes." He walked to the desk. The phone was a slim black thing screen face down. He picked it up. As he lifted it, the photograph that had been beneath it slid into view. It was the torn photograph, the one she'd been clutching when he came in. He didn't mean to look. He really didn't. But it was right there in front of him. It was a photograph of a baby, a newborn, wrinkled and red and brand new, swaddled in a hospital blanket. The torn edge ran straight down the middle of the image, separating the baby from whoever had been holding him. The other half, the half with the person, was missing. On the back of the photograph, in handwriting he assumed was hers, were 2 words and a date. "My son. October 14th, 1991. October 14th, 1991. He did the math automatically. The baby in that photograph would be 34 years old now, almost his age. He felt a strange chill move down his spine. He didn't know why. He set the photograph back down where it had been, face down. He carried the phone over to her without saying a word about what he'd seen. She had managed to get the cream blouse on. She was tucking it into her skirt when he handed her the phone. "Thank you." She unlocked the screen. She tapped a number. She put the phone to her ear. When she spoke, her voice was a different voice, the voice he recognized from interviews, from the documentaries, from the woman the world knew. Crisp, cold, controlled. "Margaret, push the Hauser meeting to 9:30. No, I don't care what his schedule looks like. He flew here. He can wait 15 minutes. And bring me coffee. Black. 2 sugars. She hung up. She set the phone down on her lap. She looked at her own reflection in the dark screen for a moment. She let out a long, shaky breath. 2 sugars, he said. She glanced up. What? You take 2 sugars. I had you pegged as black no sugar. A small surprised sound came out of her. Almost a laugh. Not quite. I take 2 sugars when I've been crying. I take it black on every other day of my life. That's a system. I have a lot of systems. I noticed. She studied him again. She was doing it more now. Studying him. Like she was trying to figure out what he was, what he wanted, what angle he was running. She had clearly been a woman who had been studied by people her whole life for what they could get from her, what they could sell her, what they could take. She was not used to being on the other side of the equation. "You're not afraid of me," she said. "No, ma'am. Most people are. I'm sure they are. Why aren't you?" He thought about it. He could have lied. He could have said something polite. He didn't. "Because I've been more afraid of things than you, Victoria." "Like what?" "Like the night I had to tell my 4-year-old that his mom wasn't coming home from the hospital." The air went out of the room. She stared at him. Her lips parted slightly. The cold mask cracked just at the edges. "I'm sorry." "Yeah, me too." A long silence. 2 years ago, she asked. 26 months. What was her name? Sarah. "And your son, Noah. He's 6. She nodded slowly. She didn't say anything else. She didn't need to. She was the first person in months, maybe longer, who had heard those names and not immediately tried to fix them, soften them, paste over them with platitudes. She just let them sit in the air where they belonged. "You should sit down," she said finally. "You've been on your feet." "I'm okay." "Sit down, Ethan." He sat in the chair across from her. There was a glass coffee table between them. He set his hands on his knees. She set her hands on the armrests of her chair. They looked at each other across the table like 2 people who had crashed into each other on a road they hadn't known was the same road. "I owe you an apology," she said. "For what?" "For screaming at you when you came in." "You don't owe me anything." "I do, actually. I screamed at you because I was humiliated, and you didn't deserve it. So I'm sorry." He shrugged slightly. "I'd have screamed too, if somebody walked in on me at the worst minute of my year." "Is that what this looks like to you? The worst minute of my year?" "Looks like the worst minute of a lot of years, Victoria." Her eyes filled again. She blinked hard. "You don't know me, Ethan." "No, ma'am, I don't." "Then how can you say that?" "Because I know what it looks like when somebody's been carrying something heavy for a long time. I know what it looks like when their arms finally give out. I've seen it in the mirror." She turned her face away. She pressed the back of her hand against her mouth. He watched her shoulders hitch just once, and then go still as she fought it down. When she spoke again, her voice was very low. "I haven't told anyone what's wrong. I don't tell anyone anything. I have lawyers and bankers and a board of directors, and not a single one of them knows me. That's a lonely way to live. It's the only way I know how to live." A knock came at the door. Victoria's whole body tensed. She wiped her face fast with the back of her hand. She straightened her spine. The mask snapped back into place so quickly that Ethan almost couldn't believe it was the same woman. "Come." The door opened. A tall woman in a gray suit stepped halfway in, holding a porcelain cup on a small silver tray. Her eyes flicked to Ethan and then quickly away the way well-trained executive assistants' eyes did, registering everything and reacting to nothing. "Your coffee, Ms. Hale. And Mr. Hauser is here. I've put him in conference room A. I told him you were finishing a private call." "Thank you, Margaret." Margaret crossed the office. She set the coffee down on the small side table. She straightened, almost imperceptibly. She did not look at Ethan again. "Will that be all, Ms. Hale?" "Yes. Close the door behind you." Margaret left. The door clicked shut. Victoria looked at the coffee. She did not pick it up. Her hand was still trembling too much for porcelain. "You can't be in here when they come up," she said quietly. "I know. And the server. There's no actual server problem. I called your company because—" She stopped. She took a slow breath. "I called your company because I needed an excuse to be alone in this office for an hour. I told my staff I had a private technical issue I was handling personally, so that no one would walk in, so that I could—" She gestured vaguely at the room, at herself. "So that I could fall apart without an audience." He nodded slowly. "Then we'll say I fixed it." "What?" "You called for a server diagnostic. I'll write it up as routine. Nothing wrong. Took 30 minutes. I'll tell my dispatcher it was a precaution. He won't ask questions. Nobody will know I was actually here." She looked at him for a long, long moment. "Why are you doing this?" "Doing what?" "All of it. Lying for me. Picking me up off the floor. Not running." He thought about that. He really thought about it. He thought about Sarah. About Noah. About Mrs. Patterson knocking on his door at 7:15 sharp. About the old woman down the hall who slipped him grocery store coupons under his door once a week and pretended not to. About the world being a place where if you were lucky, somebody picked you up off the floor when you fell. Because if Sarah was on the floor of a stranger's office somewhere, he said, "I'd want somebody to do for her what I'm doing for you." She closed her eyes. A single tear rolled down her cheek. She didn't bother to wipe this one away. "You should go," she whispered. "Before Hauser comes up, take the service elevator. Don't let the receptionist see you walk through the lobby." "Okay." "Ethan." "Yes." "Will you—" She stopped, tried again. "Will you come back?" He looked at her. "Come back. Tomorrow or whenever. Whenever you can. I'll have my office call your dispatcher. I'll invent another problem. A real one this time. Something that will require multiple visits. I'll authorize whatever rate they ask for." He stared at her. "Victoria, you don't have to pay me to come back. I'm not paying you for that. I'm paying you for your time. Your time has a price. Mine does too. I respect the transaction. It's how I know I'm not—" She shook her head. "It's how I know I'm not asking for charity." He understood then something about her that he hadn't understood a moment before. She had built her whole life on transactions, on contracts, on knowing exactly what she was giving and exactly what she was getting. The idea of receiving something for nothing kindness presents time was so alien to her that it terrified her more than any boardroom ever had. He nodded slowly. "All right. You call my dispatcher. I'll come back." "Thank you." He stood up. He picked up his toolbox. He started toward the door. Halfway there, he stopped and turned around. "Victoria?" "Yes." "Whatever it is, whoever was in the other half of that picture, you don't have to tell me. You don't have to tell anybody. But if you ever do want to tell somebody—" He hesitated. "I'm a pretty good listener, that's all." Her mouth parted. She looked at him like he had stabbed her gently in the chest. She didn't say anything. He nodded. He turned. He opened the door. He stepped into the hallway. He was halfway to the service elevator when he heard her voice behind him, faint, traveling down the long, carpeted corridor. "Ethan." He turned. She was framed in the doorway of her office, in her wheelchair. The cream silk blouse, buttoned, now her hair pushed back from her face. Her eyes red but dry. "His name was Daniel," she said. "Whose name?" "The boy in the photograph." He waited. He'd be 34 next October. "Okay?" She took a breath that shook on the way in. "I haven't said his name out loud in 30 years. He didn't know what to say, so he said the only thing he could think of. Then welcome back, Victoria." She stared at him. She nodded once, very small. She closed the door. Ethan stood in the empty hallway with his toolbox in his hand and his own heart doing something strange in his chest. He didn't have a word for it. Not yet. He didn't know that the word he was looking for was changed. Behind that closed door, Victoria Hale wheeled herself slowly back to her desk. She picked up the torn photograph. She held it against her chest. She looked at the empty office, and for the first time in 3 decades, the silence didn't feel like a fortress. It felt like a room she was going to have to learn how to leave. The call came 2 days later. Ethan was on a job in Brooklyn, a printer that had eaten its own feeder belt at a law firm above a deli, when his phone buzzed against his thigh. He pulled it out and saw Marcus's name on the screen. Cole. Ethan, you busy? I'm elbow deep in toner right now. What's up? Hale Industries called again. Ethan went still. He set down the screwdriver he'd been holding. He stepped away from the printer and walked into the hallway where the receptionist couldn't hear him. Yeah, direct request from the executive floor. They want you specifically, not the company, you by name. What's the issue? They're saying it's an ongoing diagnostic, some kind of network instability on the executive level. They want it monitored across multiple visits. They've authorized a rate of 75 an hour. Ethan's mouth went dry. 75 an hour was more than double what he made. That's a real number, Marcus. That's their number. I didn't even have to negotiate. The lady on the phone sharp as a knife by the way she just gave it to me. And Cole, listen to me. Whatever you did up there, you did it right. Don't screw it up. This is the kind of client that makes a career. When do they want me? Tomorrow, 3 p.m., same office, same instructions. Don't knock. Don't knock. Marcus paused. Ethan, is there something I should know? No. You sure about that? I fixed her server. She liked the work, that's all. Marcus didn't say anything for a beat. Okay, 3 o'clock tomorrow. Don't be late. He hung up. Ethan stood there in the hallway with his phone in his hand. He looked at the cracked screen. He looked at his reflection in the dark glass. He thought about a woman crying on the floor of an office that cost more than a small town. He thought about a torn photograph. He thought about a name that hadn't been spoken in 30 years. Daniel. He put the phone away. He went back to the printer. That night he made spaghetti for Noah. He sat across the folding table and watched his son slurp noodles and tell him a story about a kid named Tyler who had stolen a juice box. He laughed in the right places. He nodded in the right places. But his mind was somewhere else, and Noah, who was 6 years old and not stupid, noticed. Dad? Yeah, buddy. You're not listening. I'm sorry, Noah. I am. I'm just thinking about work. The big building. Yeah, the big building. Is something broken there? Ethan looked at his son. He thought about how to answer that. Yeah, Noah, something's broken there, but I don't think I can fix it with my tools. Why not? Because some things you can't fix with tools. Noah considered this with the gravity of a 6-year-old being handed an adult truth. Then how do you fix them? You don't really. You just sit with them, until the person who has them figures out how to fix them themselves. Noah twirled another forkful of spaghetti. That sounds like when Mommy was sick. Ethan's chest seized. Yeah, he said quietly. Yeah, it's a little like that. You sat with her. I did. Did it help? He thought about that for a long time. Long enough that the spaghetti got cold on his plate. I think it helped her not be alone, he said finally. I don't know if that's the same as helping, but I think it mattered. Noah nodded like a small wise man and went back to his dinner. The next afternoon at 3 p.m., exactly, Ethan stood outside the door marked V. Hale for the second time in a week. He didn't knock. He turned the handle. He stepped inside. Victoria was at her desk this time, upright, composed. The cream blouse was gone, replaced by a charcoal silk one, with a small silver pin at the collar. Her hair was pulled back. Her makeup was perfect. The photograph was nowhere in sight. She looked up when the door opened. For just a second before the executive mask reassembled itself, he saw something flicker in her face. Relief. Or maybe fear. Or maybe the strange exposed feeling of being seen by the only person on earth who had seen her broken. Ethan. Victoria. He set his toolbox down by the door. He stayed standing. Margaret tells me you negotiated quite hard, she said. I didn't negotiate at all. You quoted my dispatcher a number and he almost dropped the phone. Yes. Well, I'm aware your time is valuable. I refuse to insult it. 75 an hour isn't an insult. 75 an hour is somebody's rent. Then consider your rent paid. Sit down. He walked to the chair across from her desk and sat. She watched him do it. He had the strange feeling of being read, not assessed. Read. The way a book is read. How is your son? She asked. He blinked. He hadn't expected her to ask. Noah's good. He's fine. What does he like? What does he like? Yes. What is he interested in? What does a 6-year-old American boy spend his time thinking about in 2026? Ethan almost laughed. The way she said it, American boy in 2026, like she was a foreign observer trying to take field notes. He likes dinosaurs. He likes Spider-Man. He likes pancakes more than waffles, which is a betrayal of his mother who was a waffle person. He likes Mrs. Patterson down the hall, who watches him while I work. He likes me. Mostly. Mostly? He gets mad at me when I make him eat broccoli. Reasonable. He's a good kid, Victoria. He's a really good kid. She nodded slowly. She tapped her pen against the desk twice. She looked out the window. I had a brother, she said. I'm sorry. A younger brother. He died when I was 16. Drowning accident. Family lake house in upstate New York. I was supposed to be watching him. The way she said it. Flat. Repertorial. Like she was reading from somebody else's biography. Victoria. That's not why I'm telling you. I'm telling you because you asked last time about the photograph. And I want to give you some context. Before I tell you the rest. So you understand who I was. Before. He nodded. He didn't speak. My parents never recovered, she said. My mother stopped speaking. Almost literally. She would go entire days without saying a word to me. She lived another 11 years after Tommy died, and I think we exchanged maybe 1,000 sentences total in that time. My father did the opposite. He drank. He worked. He hit. Mostly the wall. Sometimes me. I was an only child by accident. I grew up in a house with 2 ghosts and a fist. Ethan kept his face still. I left at 18. I went to Wharton on a scholarship. I never went back. My father died of cirrhosis in 1989. My mother died of nothing in particular 6 months later. The lawyers told me she'd left me everything, which was nothing. The lake house had a lien on it. The savings were gone. I inherited a debt and a name. She paused. I was 23 when I met Richard. Richard. My ex-husband. The way she said ex-husband. The same way some people said cancer. I was 23 and I had nothing. He was 36 and he had everything. He saw something in me. I'd like to say it was my mind, but I think it was my exhaustion. I think he saw a young woman who had nothing left to lose and would therefore say yes to anything. He was right. I said yes to him. Within a year, I was Mrs. Richard Vance, and I was being introduced at parties in Manhattan as the girl Richard found. As if I had been a stray dog on the highway. Ethan's jaw tightened. He didn't say anything. I got pregnant in the spring of 1991. I didn't tell him for 2 months. By the time I did tell him, I was already terrified, because by then I knew what kind of man Richard was. I knew what he did to me when the doors were closed. I knew that the bruises on my ribs were not from being clumsy. I knew that the person I was becoming inside that house was not somebody I wanted my child to ever meet. She took a breath. He didn't want the baby. He told me to terminate. I refused. He told me if I had the baby, he would make sure I never worked again. He would make sure I never inherited $1 from him. He would make sure I was nothing. I told him I didn't care. I think that was the first time in my life I told the truth out loud. What happened? I had the baby, October 14th, 1991, a boy, 8 pounds 2 ounces. I held him for 47 minutes at the hospital. I memorized everything about him. The shape of his ears, the little furrow between his eyebrows, the way his whole hand could only barely close around the tip of my finger. She stopped. She put her hand over her mouth. Take your time, Ethan said. She breathed. And then I gave him up. Closed adoption. I signed the papers in the hospital bed, and I asked the nurse to take him to the family that was waiting in the next room. I didn't meet them. I didn't want to know their names. I wanted him gone before I lost the courage to let him be gone. Why? Because I knew if I kept him, Richard would kill us both. And I don't mean metaphorically Ethan. I mean Richard had a temper and a Glock 19 and a habit of cleaning it on the kitchen table when he was angry with me. I knew the way you know things in your bones, that if I brought a baby into that house, one of us was not going to survive the year. Probably both of us. Ethan stared at her. You saved his life, he said quietly. I gave him up. You saved his life, Victoria. She didn't answer. Did Richard know you'd had him? He was at a conference in London during the delivery. I'd planned it. I told him I'd lost the baby. Miscarriage at 35 weeks. He was relieved. Genuinely. He sent me flowers and took me to dinner the next week. We didn't speak about it again. And you stayed with him. For 3 more years, until the night he broke my back. The room went very, very quiet. Ethan didn't move. That's how I ended up in this chair, yes. He pushed me down a flight of stairs in our brownstone in March of 1994. I lost the use of both legs from the L2 vertebra down. He paid the doctors to call it a fall. He paid me eventually to call it a fall. $11 million in the divorce settlement to make sure I never said the word pushed in front of a journalist. Jesus. That $11 million is what built Hale Industries. So you could say my entire empire is funded by what he did to me. I'm not sure if that's poetic justice or just a different kind of cage. Both, probably. Probably. She picked up the pen again, set it down. He's still alive, Ethan. Richard Vance. He's 71 years old. He lives in Greenwich, Connecticut. He's on his 4th wife. He has 3 children with her. None with me as far as the world is concerned. I have not spoken to him since 1994. Okay. And 3 weeks ago I received a letter. He waited. At my private address. The address that no journalist has. The address that no one outside my legal team has. A handwritten letter on hotel stationery. From a young man in Boston, 34 years old. He wrote that he had recently learned through a DNA service that he had a biological mother named Victoria Hale. He wrote that he was not asking for money. He was not asking for anything, in fact. He was just telling me he existed. He'd grown up in Vermont. He was a high school history teacher. He had a wife and a 1-year-old daughter. Her voice cracked on the last word. A daughter, Ethan. A granddaughter. Did you write back? I drafted 17 letters. I sent 0 of them. Why? Because 2 days after I received his letter, I received another one. From Richard. What? Richard somehow knew. I don't know how. Maybe he had me watched. Maybe somebody on my legal team is on his payroll. Maybe the DNA service is. It doesn't matter how. He knew. And his letter was very simple. It said, if you contact the boy, I will tell the world the truth about your back, about the settlement, about the lie. I will tell them how you abandoned a newborn. I will tell them in a way that makes the Wall Street Journal look like a children's book. I will burn your company down. Victoria. I will burn your name down. And when I am finished, your son will know you only as the woman who ruined his life by reaching for him. Ethan felt cold. He signed it, Victoria said, like a Christmas card. Yours are. Have you shown that letter to anyone? Who would I show it to? A lawyer. The police. Ethan. She gave him a tired smile. Richard has lawyers I can't afford to fight. He has friends in places I don't have friends. And the police are not equipped for a 68-page non-disclosure agreement signed in 1994 by a 26-year-old woman who had just been told she would never walk again. Do you understand? I understand he's terrorizing you. Yes. And you've been sitting in this office alone trying to decide what to do. Yes. That's why you were on the floor. Yes. Victoria. What? That is too much weight for one person. I am aware. That's why you called me back. She didn't answer. He leaned forward in his chair. He put his elbows on his knees. He laced his fingers together. He looked at her. I'm not a lawyer, Victoria. I'm not a rich guy. I'm not anybody who can fight Richard Vance. I fix printers. I make $31 an hour except this week because you're insanely overpaying me. I have a 6-year-old son and a dead wife and an apartment with one working radiator. I am the least powerful person you have ever told this story to. I know. Then why did you tell me? She looked at him for a long moment. She looked at the door. She looked at the photograph that he now noticed was on her desk, pulled out of a drawer, the two halves of it laid carefully side by side. Because every other person I might have told this story to, she said, would have heard it as a problem. They would have heard it as a calculation. They would have asked me what I wanted to do. They would have asked me what the optics were. They would have asked me what the play was. Yeah, and I am so tired, Ethan. I am so tired of being asked what the play is. I needed to tell it to somebody who would just hear it as a story, as a thing that happened to a person, not a CEO, a person. And I think you might be the only person in my life who is capable of hearing it that way. He let out a long breath. Okay. Okay. Okay, I heard it. As a story. About a person. And I think your ex-husband is a monster, and I think you are a woman who has been carrying a 30-year-old grief like it was a baby, and I think your son in Boston wrote you that letter because some part of him wanted his mother, and I think every minute you don't write him back, he thinks you're rejecting him for the second time. She closed her eyes. I know. What are you going to do? I don't know. Yes, you do. I don't, Ethan. Victoria, look at me. She opened her eyes. What does Daniel deserve? He said. The truth or your silence? The question landed like a blow. He saw her jaw clench. He saw her hand go flat on the desk and press down, hard knuckles whitening. Don't ask me that. Why? Because I don't have the answer. Yes, you do. You're just scared of it. Of course I'm scared of it. Of course I am. You think I don't know what the right answer is? You think I haven't known the right answer since the day his letter arrived in my mailbox. I have known the right answer for 22 days, Ethan. I have known it every minute of every one of those days. And every minute of every one of those days I have chosen the wrong answer, because the right one will cost me everything I have spent 30 years building, including possibly my son's idea of who his birth mother is. Because Richard will get to him first. Richard will get to him first, Ethan. Do you understand? And Daniel will hear the story not from me, but from the man who put me in this chair. And Daniel will spend the rest of his life believing that his mother was a coward who threw him away. She was breathing hard. And what is he going to believe if you stay silent? Ethan said quietly. She didn't answer. What is he going to believe, Victoria, if you say nothing for another month, another year, another 5 years? Until Richard dies and you're 70, and Daniel is 40, and his daughter is 6. What is your granddaughter going to believe about the woman who never came? A tear rolled down her cheek. Just one. She didn't wipe it away. I don't know how to do this, Ethan. Yes, you do. You just don't know how to do it alone. She looked at him. Then don't be alone, he said. The silence in the office was so heavy it felt like a physical thing pressing against the windows. Finally, she reached across the desk. Her hand was trembling. She pushed the photograph toward him. The two torn halves. The baby on one side. On the other side, now he could see, was a young woman in a hospital gown. Her hair was longer then. Her face was younger, softer, undestroyed. She was holding the baby against her chest and looking down at him with an expression Ethan had only ever seen one other time in his life, the expression Sarah had worn the first time she'd held Noah. That's me, Victoria whispered. That's me holding him. I tore it in half because I couldn't stand to look at us together. I kept both halves. I have kept both halves in a drawer for 34 years. Victoria. I want to write him back. Then write him back. I want to tell him the truth. All of it. The pregnancy, the adoption, the chair, even Richard. I want him to know who I was when I gave him up and who I have been since. Then tell him. And I want to do it before Richard can. I want to be the one who reaches him first. Then we reach him first. She looked at him sharply. We. He didn't take the word back. You said you weren't anybody who could fight Richard Vance, she said. I'm not. Then what are you offering me, Ethan Cole? He thought about that. He thought about Sarah at the end. He thought about Noah at 4 years old at his mother's funeral. He thought about Mrs. Patterson at his door at 7:15 sharp. I'm offering to sit with you while you do it, he said. That's all. I can't do anything else. I can't draft the letter. I can't fight your husband. I can't save your company. But I can sit with you while you write to your son. I can sit with you while you read whatever he writes back. I can be a person in the room with you while you do the bravest thing you've ever done. That's what I'm offering. She stared at him. That's not a small offer, she said. It's the only one I have. She looked down at the 2 torn halves of the photograph on the desk. She slid them slowly toward each other until the rough edges met. The baby and the mother reunited on a polished mahogany surface 34 years too late. Tomorrow, she said. Tomorrow what? Come back tomorrow. 3 p.m. I'll have paper. Real paper. None of this email nonsense. I want him to be able to hold what I write him. Okay. And Ethan, yes, bring something for yourself. A book, a coffee, whatever you need. It will take me a long time to write this letter. I'll bring a book. What book? He thought about it. Whatever Noah's reading. I'll read his copy. Then I can talk to him about it tonight. She let out a small sound that was not quite a laugh, not quite a sob. Somewhere in between. He's a lucky boy, Noah. He's the lucky one in my life, Victoria, not the other way around. He stood up. He picked up his toolbox. He walked to the door. Ethan? He turned. She was sitting very upright behind her desk, the torn photograph held flat under her hand. Thank you, she said, for not running, either time. He nodded once. See you tomorrow, Victoria. He closed the door behind him. In the hallway, he stopped for a second. He set down the toolbox. He pressed his palm flat against the wall and closed his eyes and breathed. He had no idea what he had just signed up for. He had no idea what tomorrow was going to look like. He had no idea who Richard Vance was going to be when Richard Vance found out that someone had walked into Victoria Hale's office and not left. But he knew one thing. He knew that he was going to be in that chair tomorrow at 3 p.m. with a children's book in his lap while a woman the world was afraid of wrote a letter to her son. And somewhere 8 floors below a phone in the executive suite of a Greenwich, Connecticut estate had already started to ring. Richard Vance picked up on the 3rd ring. He was eating breakfast, a soft-boiled egg in a porcelain cup. Buttered toast cut into perfect strips by a housekeeper named Elena, who had worked for him for 19 years and who hated him the way only people who watch you eat every morning can hate you. Vance. Sir, it's Whitley. Whitley was the man Richard paid $11,000 a month to know things he wasn't supposed to know. What? She's had a visitor in her office 4 times in the last 6 days. Richard set down his spoon. Who? A technician, IT contractor, name's Ethan Cole, 35, widower, lives in Queens with a 6-year-old boy, drives a 2014 Toyota with a busted taillight, makes $31 an hour at his contracting firm. She's paying him $75. How long is he staying? 2 hours, sometimes 3. Yesterday it was almost 4. In her private office. Yes, sir. With the door closed. Yes, sir. Richard picked up the linen napkin from his lap. He folded it. He set it on the table. He looked out the window at the garden, where a man named Hector was raking leaves that had fallen overnight. Tell me about the boy. The technician. His son. There was a pause on the other end of the line. 6 years old, first grade, PS 196 in Queens. Mother died of pancreatic cancer in 2024. The kid is in after-school care with a neighbor woman named Patterson, third floor walk-up. School lets out at 3:15. The neighbor picks him up, walks him home. Send me the school address. Sir. Whitley. Sir, I have to ask. The boy. We don't. I'm not going to touch the boy, Whitley. I just want to know where he is. I want her to know that I know where he is. There's a difference. Understood. And the letter. What letter? The one she's writing. To Daniel. A longer pause. I don't know if she's written it yet, sir. She will. With the technician sitting across from her, she will. People do brave things when somebody is watching. That's the whole problem with witnesses. What would you like me to do? Richard thought about it. He picked up his spoon again. He cracked the top of the egg. Find Daniel's address in Boston, the exact one, not the post office box, the home, the wife's name, the daughter's name, the daughter's daycare. I want a complete picture by Friday. Sir, with all due respect, that's a lot of moving pieces. If something. Whitley. Yes, sir. You've been in my employ for 14 years. Have I ever given you instructions you regretted following? A silence. No, sir. Then by Friday. He hung up. He looked at his egg. The yolk was already starting to set. He pushed the cup away. 300 miles north at 3 p.m. Exactly, Ethan opened the door of Victoria's office for the 4th time in 6 days. He had a children's book under his arm. Charlotte's Web. Noah's copy. The cover was held together with packing tape because Noah had once dropped it in the bathtub. Victoria looked up from her desk. There were 2 pens lying on a leather blotter in front of her. A thick stack of cream-colored paper. A pot of black ink. Real ink, the kind you dipped a fountain pen into. You brought a book. I told you I would. What is it? He held it up so she could see the cover. Charlotte's Web. He's reading it for class. He says the spider is his favorite character, but he's pretending the pig is so the other boys don't make fun of him. She let out a small laugh. A real one this time. He'd only heard her real laugh twice now. It was a different sound than her professional laugh. It had air in it. Smart boy. Yeah, too smart sometimes. Sit. There's coffee. Margaret brought up a pot. He sat. He set the book on the small table beside his chair. He poured himself a cup from the silver carafe. He didn't put sugar in it. He didn't need to. The coffee in this office was so good it didn't taste like coffee. It tasted like a country he'd never been to. Victoria picked up one of the pens. She unscrewed the cap. She dipped the nib in the ink. She held it over the paper. She didn't write. A full minute passed. Then another. The pen hovered above the cream paper, and Ethan watched a single bead of ink form at the tip and slowly grow until it fell plink onto the page. A small black starburst. She stared at it. I don't know how to start. What do you want him to know first? I don't know. What's the most important thing? I don't know. Victoria. I don't know, Ethan. He set down his coffee. He leaned forward. Then start with what you would say to him if he was standing in this room. I have no idea what I would say to him if he was standing in this room. That's the problem. Yes, you do. Stop telling me I know things I don't know. Stop telling me you don't know things you know. She glared at him. He glared back. Then her face cracked very slightly, and she let out a small breath that wasn't quite a laugh. You are an extraordinarily stubborn man. I have a 6-year-old. Stubborn is a survival skill. I see that. She looked at the page. She looked at the dark blot of ink she'd dropped on it. She picked up the paper, balled it, threw it on the floor, took a fresh sheet. If he was standing in this room, she said quietly, almost to herself, the first thing I would say is, she stopped. Yes. I would say I'm sorry. Then write that. It's not enough. It's where you start. She put the pen to the paper. Daniel. I'm sorry. She stopped. Keep going, he said. For what? Tell him what you're sorry for. She wrote, "I'm sorry that this letter is 34 years late. I'm sorry that the first time you read my handwriting will also be the first time you understand why." She set the pen down. Her hands were shaking. "I can't, Ethan." "You can. I cannot tell my son in a letter that his birth mother is in a wheelchair because his birth father pushed her down a staircase. I cannot put those sentences on a page and mail them to a kindergarten teacher in Boston who has a 1-year-old daughter." "He's a high school teacher." "What? You said kindergarten. Earlier you said high school history." High school history. "Yes, I'm sorry, You're scared. It's okay. This is not Ethan. This is not the same as you being scared on the subway. This is Victoria. I know it's not the same. I never said it was the same." She looked at him. Her chin was trembling. "Will you read it back to me?" she whispered. "What I have so far." "You have 3 sentences. Read them anyway." He read them. "Daniel, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that this letter is 34 years late. I'm sorry that the first time you read my handwriting will also be the first time you understand why." She closed her eyes. "Keep them," she said. "Those 3. We keep those." "Okay. What comes next?" "That's up to you." "Help me, Ethan." He thought about it. "Tell him about the day he was born." "Why?" "Because that's what every kid wants to know. Every kid wants to know what their mother thought the first time she held them. He's been wondering for 34 years, Victoria. Tell him." She opened her eyes. She picked up the pen. For the next 40 minutes, she wrote, slowly, sometimes stopping, sometimes balling up a page and starting it again. Ethan opened Charlotte's Web and read in silence across from her the same chapter Noah was on. The one where Charlotte writes, "Some pig in the web." He underlined a sentence with his fingernail because he didn't have a pencil. He thought about the spider and the pig and the word radiant. He thought about all the things one creature could write to save another. At 4:15, Victoria set the pen down. "Read it," she said. "It's not for me." "Read it, Ethan. Please. I need to hear it in another voice. I can't tell anymore if it's a letter or a corporate filing." He stood. He walked around the desk. He stood beside her chair. She handed him the pages. There were 6 of them now. 6 sheets of cream paper covered in dark, even handwriting. He read them out loud, quietly. He read about a hospital room in October of 1991. He read about a young woman with bruises along her ribs and a baby in her arms. He read about counting eyelashes and memorizing a small, wrinkled forehead. He read about handing the baby to a nurse and turning her face to the wall and biting through her own lip to keep from screaming. He read about Richard, the way Richard polished a gun on a kitchen table, the way the staircase had felt going down, the way the hospital ceiling had looked the day a doctor told her she would never walk again. He read about 30 years of looking at the empty half of a photograph and choosing every morning not to break it. He read until his voice gave out halfway down the 6th page. "I can't read this part." "Why?" "Because I'm crying." She looked up at him. He hadn't realized he was crying until she said, "I can't read this part." He realized then that there was wet on his face. He wiped it with the back of his hand. He cleared his throat. "Sorry." "Don't be sorry. It's just I have a son." "I know. And the part where you wrote about the way he smelled in the blanket, the hospital blanket. Sarah said the same thing. About Noah, the first time, the same exact thing." "I'm sorry, Ethan. Don't be sorry." They sat there for a moment. She in her chair, he standing beside her with 6 pages of her life in his hands. "Finish it," she said quietly. "I can't." "What's left?" "The end. There's one more paragraph." He looked at the page. There was one more paragraph in her handwriting. "If you do not want to write me back, Daniel, I will understand. If this letter is too much or too late or too strange, I will understand. I have no claim on you. I forfeited that claim a long time ago, and I do not believe I get it back simply because you wrote me first. But I want you to know, not to require, just to know that I am here. That I have been here. That I have thought about you every October 14th for 34 years, and many other days too, and that if you ever want to meet me, I will move whatever needs to be moved to make it happen. Your mother, if you'll have me. Your stranger, if you won't. Victoria. He read it twice. That's perfect. Is it? Yes. Even your stranger. Especially that. You don't think it's honest. That's all that matters now. She nodded slowly. She took the pages back from him. She squared their edges. She folded them in thirds. She slid them into a heavy cream envelope. She wrote an address on the front in the same dark, even hand. Daniel Whitfield, 47, Bowden Street, Apartment 2, Boston, Massachusetts, 02114. She sealed the envelope. Now what? She said. Now you mail it. That feels too small. It's not too small. That's what mailing it is. It's a small thing that means an enormous thing. She looked at the envelope in her hands. Margaret can take it to the post office downstairs. No. No. You take it. I can't go to the post office, Ethan. Why not? I haven't been to a post office in 15 years. I have people for that. Then today, you're a person who goes to the post office. She stared at him. You're serious. You wrote it, Victoria. You, not Margaret. You should be the one who hands it across the counter. You'll remember the smell of the post office. You'll remember the woman who weighed it. You'll remember writing a check for $2.70 to send the most important letter of your life. That's a memory worth having. She let out a long breath. Will you come with me? Yes. All right. She put the envelope in her lap. She unlocked the wheels of her chair. She rolled out from behind the desk. He picked up the toolbox he hadn't actually opened in 4 visits and slung the strap over his shoulder for camouflage. In the elevator going down, neither of them spoke. In the lobby, Margaret was waiting near the security desk with a confused expression. Ms. Hale, were you planning on— I'm going to the post office on the corner, Margaret. I'll be back in 20 minutes. I can take that for— not this one. Margaret blinked. Then she nodded once the way she nodded at everything Victoria said and stepped aside. The post office was on the corner of 53rd and Lex half a block down. Ethan walked beside Victoria, slowing his pace to match her chair. The sidewalk was crowded. People were not used to seeing Victoria Hale at street level. A few of them looked. None of them stared. New York was good for that, at least. Inside the post office, the line was 4 people long. Victoria pulled into the line and waited her turn like a person. When she got to the counter, the clerk, a woman in her 60s with pink reading glasses on a chain around her neck, took the envelope without looking at the name on the front. First class. Yes. Tracking? Yes, please. $2.73. Victoria pulled a credit card from a small leather wallet and tapped it against the reader. The clerk handed her a small white slip with a tracking number on it. She handed Ethan the receipt without thinking. He folded it and put it in his shirt pocket. When they walked out, the sidewalk had filled in with a wave of late afternoon foot traffic. Victoria pulled to a stop near a streetlight. She looked up at him. Her eyes were full, but not falling over. It's gone. It's gone. That's it. There's no taking it back. Nope. He'll have it in 2 days. Probably. She stared at the receipt in his hand. $2.73. That's what it costs to change a life. That's a hell of an exchange rate. Best one I know. She let out a breath that was half a laugh. Thank you, Ethan. You wrote it. I just brought a book. You brought a lot more than a book. He didn't argue. They walked back to the building. In the lobby, Margaret was still there, doing the executive assistant version of pretending she hadn't been worried. Ethan took that as his cue. I should head out. I've got to pick up Noah. Ethan? Yeah. Come back tomorrow, please. Tomorrow's Friday. I work in the Bronx tomorrow. Saturday, then. Saturday I have Noah. Mrs. Patterson takes Saturdays off. Bring him. He blinked. What? Bring him with you. To my office. We'll go to the park afterward. Central Park is 6 blocks from here. He's never been to the boathouse, has he? No. Then bring him. Victoria, I'm not bringing my son to your office. Why not? Because... He stopped. He didn't actually have an answer. Victoria, look. You're my client. He's my kid. I don't know what to call this. I don't know what we're calling this. I don't think we should be... I'm not asking you to call it anything. Then what are you asking? She looked at him for a long, steady moment. I'm asking you to bring your son to a park. Because I sent a letter to a son I haven't seen in 34 years, and I won't hear back for 2 days at the earliest, and I am not going to make it through the weekend alone in my apartment. I am asking you for a Saturday. Just a Saturday, with a 6-year-old in it. His chest ached in a way he didn't have a word for. Saturday, he said. Saturday. I'll bring him. We'll be at the boathouse at noon. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. He talks a lot. He'll ask you about the wheelchair within 90 seconds. 6-year-olds don't have a filter. Good. I'll know what he thinks. He'll think it's cool. That's how 6-year-olds work. Then I'll be flattered. He almost smiled. He nodded. He turned. He walked out of the lobby into the late afternoon light. He took the subway back to Queens. He picked Noah up from Mrs. Patterson at 6:15 sharp. He made macaroni and cheese from a box. He read another chapter of Charlotte's Web before bed. He didn't tell Noah about Saturday yet. He didn't know how to. That night, while Ethan was washing dishes, his phone buzzed on the counter. A text from a number he didn't recognize. Cute boy. PS 196. Mrs. Robertson's class. The neighbor walks him home at 3:20 every day. Walks slow, holds his hand. Tell Victoria to mind her business, or I'll mind it for her. He stared at the screen. The water was still running. He turned it off. He didn't move. Another buzz. Don't try to find this number. It will not be the same number tomorrow. He set down the dish towel. He walked very quietly to Noah's bedroom door. He pushed it open an inch. His son was asleep, curled around his stuffed elephant, one bare foot sticking out from under the blanket. He closed the door. He went back to the kitchen. He stood in the middle of his 487-square-foot apartment and felt his entire body get cold from the inside. He picked up the phone. He didn't reply to the texts. He didn't call the police. Not yet. He didn't know what he would even say. He scrolled to the most recent number he'd dialed. He pressed call. Victoria picked up on the second ring. Ethan, he knows. A pause. Who knows what? Richard. He knows about Noah. He just texted me. He knows what school. He knows what time Mrs. Patterson picks him up. He knows what street we live on. Victoria. He knows about my son. The silence on the other end of the line was the longest silence he had ever heard in his life. When she spoke, her voice was very quiet. Ethan. Yeah. Pack a bag, both of you. Right now. Tonight. What? Pack a bag for you and a bag for Noah. 3 days of clothes. His favorite toy. His school books if he has homework. Whatever Mrs. Patterson would need to know to not panic. I'm sending a car. It will be at your building in 45 minutes. Victoria. I can't. You can. And you will. Because you have a 6-year-old son, and Richard Vance just told you that he knows where your 6-year-old son is at 3:20 in the afternoon, and I am the person who put your son in that man's line of sight. So you are going to let me get him out of it. Do you understand me, Ethan? His hand was shaking. He realized he was clutching the edge of the counter so hard his knuckles had gone white. Where are you taking us? Somewhere he can't find you. I have a place. It's not in either of our names. You'll be safe there, both of you. For as long as it takes. As long as what takes? As long as it takes me to end this. Victoria. 45 minutes, Ethan. The car will be downstairs. The driver's name is Hector. He will say I'm here for the package from Queens. Do not get in any other car. Do you understand? Yes. Pack the bag. He hung up. He stood in the middle of his kitchen with his phone still warm in his hand, and he looked at the closed door of his son's bedroom, and for the first time since Sarah died, he felt something in his chest that wasn't grief. It was rage. He walked to Noah's room. He pushed open the door. He sat down on the edge of his son's bed. He brushed the hair back from the small forehead. He whispered the boy's name. Noah, hey buddy, wake up. We're going on a trip. Noah opened his eyes. He blinked sleepily up at his father. Where? Somewhere safe. Is something bad? Ethan looked at his son. He thought about all the lies he could tell. He thought about all the things he had been protecting Noah from for 2 years and 4 months. He thought about Sarah. There's a man who's not nice, he said quietly. He's not going to get anywhere near you, I promise. But me and you were going to go stay somewhere else for a few days, so that he can't even try. Are you scared, Daddy? A little bit? Then I'll be brave for both of us. Ethan picked his son up, blanket and all, and held him against his chest, and he was not okay. He was not okay. He was not okay. But he packed the bag. 43 minutes later, a black sedan with diplomatic plates pulled up in front of his building. The driver was a man named Hector. He said the words. Ethan put his son in the back seat. He buckled the small body in with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. The car pulled away from the curb at 9:07 p.m. In Greenwich, Connecticut, Richard Vance was just sitting down to dinner. The car drove for an hour and 12 minutes. Ethan didn't ask where they were going. He held Noah's hand across the back seat and watched the city lights thin out and become highway, and the highway thin out and become trees. Noah fell asleep against his shoulder somewhere around the George Washington Bridge. Hector didn't speak. The man drove the way professionals drove, both hands on the wheel, eyes on the mirrors more than the road. Once, when a black SUV merged behind them too fast, Hector took the next 3 exits in a sequence that didn't make geographic sense, and when they came back onto a highway, the SUV was gone. At 10:19 p.m., they pulled into the gravel driveway of a stone farmhouse somewhere in northern Connecticut. There were lights on inside. Victoria was in the doorway in her chair, a wool blanket across her lap. Ethan carried Noah inside. The house smelled like firewood and old books. Victoria pointed silently down a hallway. Ethan laid his son down on a 4-poster bed in a room with a quilt that looked older than he was. Noah didn't wake up. He never did once he was deep. When Ethan came back out to the living room, Victoria was at a low table with a laptop open in front of her and a phone pressed against her ear. I don't care what time it is in Frankfurt, Walter. Wake him up. No, wake him up. Tell him I'm calling a press conference at 8 a.m. Eastern. Tell him I want every member of the board on the line by 7. Tell him I know exactly what I'm doing. Yes, Walter. He doesn't have a vote on this. I have a vote on this. I am the vote on this. Good night. She hung up. She set the phone face down. She looked at Ethan. He's asleep. Out cold. Good. Victoria, what are you doing? I'm ending it. Ending what? Richard. He sat down on the couch across from her. His hands were still shaking. He pressed them flat against his knees. Talk to me. She closed the laptop. Tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. I'm going on television, live, every network. I've already had Margaret confirm 3 of them. The other 2 will fall in line by midnight. I'm going to tell the entire story, Ethan. The pregnancy, the adoption, the staircase, the settlement, the 34 years of silence. All of it. Victoria. And then I'm going to read Richard's letter on air. Word for word. The threat. His signature. Yours are. I'm going to look into a camera, and I am going to tell the world that the man who has spent 30 years building a reputation as a Greenwich philanthropist is the same man who broke my back and threatened my son and put a private investigator on a 6-year-old boy in Queens. Jesus. Tomorrow he wakes up and the entire country knows what he is. Tomorrow he wakes up and his 4th wife knows. His 3 children know. His golf club knows. His lawyers who have been protecting him for 30 years will start dropping him before the lunch hour. He'll sue you. For what? For telling the truth. He can't sue me for telling the truth. For breaking the NDA. Let him. Let him go on television and explain to the public why an $11 million non-disclosure agreement was necessary in 1994 between a 36-year-old man and a 26-year-old woman with a fractured spine. Let him stand in a courtroom and try to enforce that contract. I will pay every legal fee. I will lose every penny I have. I do not care anymore, Ethan. He threatened a child. He threatened your child. There is no version of tomorrow in which I sit in my office and pretend that didn't happen. He stared at her. This will burn down everything you built. Yes. Hale Industries. Yes. 18,000 employees. The company will survive without me. The name might not. I'm prepared for that. I've spent 2 hours tonight on the phone with my CFO. We have contingencies. The company can be restructured. The board will replace me by Monday, and that's fine. That's fine, Ethan. Victoria? No, it's not. It is. You spent 30 years building this. I spent 30 years hiding behind this. There is a difference. And tonight, when you called me and told me what Richard texted you when I heard your voice. Ethan, when I heard what your voice sounded like, when a man you have never met just told you he knows the name of your son's school, I realized I have been hiding behind this company for so long that I forgot it was a hiding place. I thought it was a life. It wasn't. It was a wall I built to keep Richard from being able to look me in the face. And it worked. For 30 years it worked. But I am not letting that wall stand between him and your boy. Don't do this for Noah. Why not? Because then I'll owe you something I can't pay back. You don't owe me anything. Victoria, Ethan. She rolled her chair forward until she was right in front of him. She took his hand. Her fingers were cold. Listen to me. I'm not doing it for Noah. I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it because I should have done it 32 years ago and I didn't have the courage. And tonight, for the first time in my life, somebody is in the next room sleeping in my house, and I have decided I would rather lose the empire than lose him. Or you, or the man my son in Boston is going to think I am when he reads my letter on Monday and turns on the television to find out his birth mother is the woman the world is talking about. He didn't say anything. She squeezed his hand. 8 a.m. tomorrow. Margaret is bringing a black suit at 6. I want you and Noah to stay here. There's food in the kitchen. Hector will be in the guest cottage. Don't leave the property. Don't answer the phone. Watch the broadcast on the television in the den. Victoria. I'm going to say his name on television, Ethan. I am going to say Richard Vance, and I am going to keep saying it until he is the only thing the world is afraid of. Not me. Him. He looked at her hand in his. Okay, he said. Okay. I'll be here. Watching. That's all I need. She didn't let go of his hand for a long time. At 7:58 a.m. the next morning, Ethan sat on the couch in the den with Noah in his lap and a bowl of cereal Noah had asked for and not eaten. The television was on. A news anchor in a dark blue suit was saying Victoria Hale's name with the careful gravity of a person who didn't yet know what was about to happen. Daddy, why is your friend on TV? She has to tell some people something important. What? A true thing. A really hard true thing. Is that why she's been sad? Yeah, buddy, that's why. The camera cut. Victoria appeared. She was at a podium in front of a plain navy curtain. The black suit fit her like armor. Her hair was pulled back. There was no makeup on her face except a thin line of mascara. Margaret had clearly not won that argument. She wanted to look like herself. The woman in the cream blouse on the floor of the office, not the magazine cover. She looked into the camera. My name is Victoria Hale. I am the founder and chief executive officer of Hale Industries. In approximately 45 minutes, the board of directors of my company will receive my resignation. Before they do, I owe a great many people the truth. So, I am going to tell it now. In order. With no spin. Some of what I am about to say will be very difficult to hear. I would ask that if you have small children near the television, you might consider sending them out of the room. Ethan reached for the remote. Noah grabbed his hand. It's okay, Daddy. I want to listen. Noah, you said it was a hard, true thing. I want to hear it. He didn't have an answer for that. He let his son hold the remote. Victoria spoke for 41 minutes. She told the story in the same order she had told it to Ethan 6 days earlier in her office. The brother who drowned. The mother who stopped speaking. The man named Richard Vance she had married at 23. The pregnancy she had hidden. The 47 minutes she had held her son. The closed adoption signed in a hospital bed. The staircase in March of 1994. The $11 million settlement. The 30 years of silence. She told it without crying. Her voice cracked twice, but she kept going. Then she pulled Richard's letter from a folder on the podium. She unfolded it. She looked into the camera. 3 weeks ago, I received a letter from my biological son, who is 34 years old, who has a wife and a 1-year-old daughter who has spent his life as a high school history teacher in the Boston area. I will not say his name on television because his name is his and not mine to give. He asked nothing of me. He simply told me that he existed. 2 days after that letter arrived in my home, I received another letter from Richard Vance. I am going to read it now in its entirety. I have notarized copies, and the original is in the possession of my attorney. She read it, word for word, the threat, the signature. Yours are. She set it back down on the podium. Last night, she said, Mr. Vance escalated his threats. He hired a private investigator to surveil a 6-year-old child in Queens, New York. The child of a man who has nothing to do with any of this. A man whose only connection to my story is that he is the only person who has shown me kindness without expecting payment in over 30 years. Mr. Vance threatened that child to get to me. So today, I am getting to him first. She looked into the camera. Richard, I know you're watching, so I want to say this directly to you. You are not going to touch that boy. You are not going to touch my son in Boston. You are not going to touch his daughter. Because every single attorney in this country who has ever taken your money is about to learn what you did to me in March of 1994. Every single charity board you sit on is about to ask you to step down by lunch. Every single member of your golf club is going to remember suddenly that they have other plans on Saturdays. You spent 3 decades buying my silence. The silence is over. As of this morning, it costs nothing. She paused. To my son in Boston, if you are watching, your letter is the most important letter I have ever received. I wrote one back. It is in the mail. You will have it on Monday. I would like you to read it before you decide anything about me. I am not asking for anything. I never will. I just want you to know that I have loved you in the strange, terrible way that a mother can love a child she does not know for 34 years. And whatever you decide after Monday, I will accept. She paused again. And to the man in Queens, and his son, I owe you both a debt I cannot calculate. I will spend whatever remains of my life trying to pay a small portion of it back. Thank you for not running, either of you. She stepped away from the podium. The press conference erupted. Reporters shouted. Cameras flashed. Victoria did not answer questions. She wheeled herself off the platform without looking back. Ethan realized he was crying. Noah was holding his hand with both of his small ones. Daddy. Yeah, buddy. Did your friend just save us? He looked down at his son. Yeah, Noah. I think she did. By Monday afternoon, Richard Vance had been removed from 4 corporate boards and 1 charity. By Tuesday, his 4th wife had filed for separation. By Wednesday, 3 women none of them knew had come forward with their own stories. A flight attendant in 1987, a junior associate at his old firm in 1992, a housekeeper named Elena, who had worked for him for 19 years, and who had a journal she had kept since 2006. The federal investigation that opened on the following Friday was not, as it turned out, primarily about Victoria. It was about everything that had come after. Richard Vance hired 3 different lawyers in a single week. None of them returned his calls by the 2nd week. On Monday afternoon, the letter arrived at 47 Bowden Street in Boston. Daniel Whitfield read it sitting on the front steps of his apartment building with his daughter Mira asleep in a stroller beside him, while his wife Anna watched from inside through the window with one hand pressed against the glass. He read it twice. He folded it back into the envelope. He sat for a long time without moving. Then he picked up his phone. He didn't have Victoria's number. He had Margaret's from a forwarding line listed on Hale Industries' contact page. He called it. Margaret answered on the second ring. "Hale Industries, this is Margaret. My name is Daniel Whitfield. I'm..." "Mr. Whitfield, yes. Hold for one moment." The hold lasted 11 seconds. Victoria picked up. "Daniel." "Hi." "Hi." There was a long silence. "I read the letter," he said. "Okay." "I watched the press conference." "Okay." "My wife and we've talked about it a lot." "Okay." "Victoria, is it okay if I call you Victoria? I don't know what to call you yet. You can call me whatever you need to call me Daniel." "Okay." A breath. "I'm not angry," he said. She closed her eyes. She didn't speak. "I want you to hear that first. Before anything. I'm not angry. I had a good life. I had parents who loved me. I had a brother. I had a dog named Pickle. I had a normal childhood. I never grew up wondering why you didn't want me. I always figured there was a reason. I read your letter, and now I know what the reason was. And Victoria, you don't owe me anything. I want you to know that." "Daniel." "Yeah. I have a granddaughter." "You do. What's her name?" "Mira." "Mira." "Yeah. Will I..." Her voice cracked. "I'm sorry. Will I get to meet her?" Yeah, you will. We'll come down. Or you can come up. Whichever works. Whenever you're ready." "I'm ready now." "Okay." "I'm sorry. I've been ready for 34 years, Daniel." I know you have. I'm ready too." She started crying. She didn't try to hide it. "Mom," he said. He stopped. "I'm sorry. Is that okay to call you?" "Yes." "Mom, I have to go. Mira's about to wake up, but I'll call you tomorrow." "Okay, I promise." "Okay." "Mom." "Yes." "Thank you for the letter." "Thank you for the first one." He hung up. In a stone farmhouse in northern Connecticut, a woman in a wheelchair pressed a cell phone against her chest and cried so hard that a 6-year-old boy who had wandered into the room with a juice box had to climb up into her lap and pat her shoulder and ask her if she needed Spider-Man. She told him she did. He went and got his. 3 weeks later, Hale Industries did not collapse. It restructured. Victoria stepped down as CEO and onto the board, where she remained as a strategic advisor at her own request, and at no salary. The interim chief executive, a woman named Lila Park, who had been Victoria's chief operating officer for 9 years, held the company steady through the storm. The stock dropped 28% in the first week and recovered 19 of those points by the end of the month. The board, after some negotiation, did not accept Victoria's full resignation. They called it a leave of absence. She allowed them to call it whatever helped them sleep. Daniel and Anna and Mira drove down from Boston the following Saturday. They spent the afternoon at the farmhouse. Victoria held her granddaughter for the first time in her life, and her hands shook so badly she had to sit very still in her chair and let the baby be lowered into her lap. Mira looked up at her with the calm seriousness of a 1-year-old who had not yet learned to be afraid of strangers. She reached up. She grabbed Victoria's nose. She laughed. That was when Victoria Hale, the woman the world had spent 3 weeks talking about, finally completely broke in the only way that mattered. Ethan stood in the doorway with Noah's hand in his and did not interrupt. He took Daniel to the porch later, while the women were inside. They stood next to each other and didn't quite know how to talk. 2 men who had been brought into the same orbit by accident. Daniel was taller than Ethan had expected. He had Victoria's eyes and somebody else's smile. "I owe you," Daniel said finally. "You don't owe me anything. You picked her up off the floor. Anybody would have." "No," Daniel said. Not anybody. Anybody is what she had for 30 years. She didn't have you. Now she does. Ethan didn't have an answer for that. 2 months later, on a clear Saturday in October, they went to Central Park. Ethan and Noah and Victoria. The boathouse the way Victoria had promised once. Ethan pushed the chair down the path because Victoria let him on Saturdays. She let almost no one else. Noah ran ahead of them, throwing pieces of bread at ducks who weren't supposed to have bread. Ethan kept telling him to stop. Noah kept not stopping. They sat by the water. Victoria turned her face up to the sun. Ethan watched her. He had been watching her for a long time now in a way that had become its own quiet thing. Ethan. Yeah. I'm not asking you for anything. Okay. I'm just telling you that if you ever wanted, if there was ever a point where... Victoria. Yes, I know. You know. I know. She let out a small laugh. All right then. All right. Noah came running back. He was holding a pine cone. He held it out to Victoria with both hands. This is for you. For me. Because Daddy says you don't have any pine cones in your office. That's true, I don't. So now you have one. Victoria took the pine cone in both hands like it was made of glass. Thank you, Noah. You're welcome. He climbed up onto the bench next to her. He looked at the chair. He'd been waiting. Ethan knew for 93 days to ask the question that 6-year-olds always eventually asked. Does it hurt? Sometimes. Does it hurt today? A little. Do you want to hold my hand? She looked at him. He held out his hand. It was small and pink and slightly sticky from a granola bar he'd eaten an hour ago. She took it. She held it. She didn't let go for a long time. Across the park, the trees were turning. A breeze came up off the water. A 6-year-old boy with his mother's eyes held the hand of a woman who had spent 30 years being afraid of being seen, and a single father with grease still under one fingernail. Watched them and understood that he had not, after all, walked into that office 2 months ago to fix a server. He had walked in to find the rest of his life. And he had.